Okay, hi again. So last week as I said, I've my part of my job is to get people inspired around the altar. And so last week I talked a little bit about the benefits of just putting your palms together. So even for those of us online, um, perhaps whoever's on the could put up the prayers, share the prayers for those who's on the Venerable Dundrub or whoever doing screen sharing. Who is? Zayla? Zayla. Yeah, yeah, that's great. So you have something up there online too. You may have your altar already, but so just taking a moment to connect with the beautiful altar we have here, or simply online the image of the Buddha, which is not just simple, As I say, I mean, even these days, so many people are not Buddhists. They feel the influence of the Buddha. They feel they have like people feel inspired to have a picture of the Buddha in their house, because it brings fortune, auspiciousness, or a sense of peace to the house. So never mind us, who already have some level of conviction in the teachings of the Buddha, the life story of the Buddha. He's touched our heart in some way. So the Buddha has a holy body. So these are all the bodies here. He has speech. We have the text. We have the text here. And then the mind of the Buddha is hard to fathom. We can't see the mind of the Buddha at this level. But the stupa embodies like these different aspects of enlightenment, and is kind of on the altar as a symbol of the Buddha's mind. So we prostrate to the body, speech, and mind because that's what we want to. We always have these symbols on the altar, the body, many symbols of the body, different aspects of the Buddha's awakened mind. The speech, the main way the Buddhas communicate with us is through the speech, yeah. But the body is also communicating because, as I said, even non-Buddhists, they want to have an image of the Buddha in their house because it communicates peace, communicates good luck, maybe fortune, something to them, just that presence. So that's the power of the Buddhas, how far they can reach and benefit and infiltrate our minds, our hearts, even if we don't have a lot of faith, So the body's communicating, the speech is communicating through listening to the teachings. But there's a presence, there's an energy that's infiltrating us all the time. And we feel that when we come to this center. Because there's this, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are guiding us all the time, So more we practice, more we feel that, more we listen, more we can connect with that guidance. So when we put our hands together, our heart, we are opening ourselves up to receive more and more that guidance, that wisdom, that ability for us to listen and hear this constant stream of communication coming from various ways from the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. That's the power of their bodhicitta for us. They have like vast ways to communicate with us and bring us out of our limitations right now, bring us out of suffering, causes of suffering. So let's just connect with that for a moment. Putting our hands together, feeling that stream of blessing energy. And we prostrate to that, we bow down to that. So that wisdom may it always be influenced by the blessings of the body, the speech and the mind, the communication of the body, speech and mind of all the Buddhas. May I always hear that, be in touch with that. Om Namo Manjushri Namaste. So we're doing standing meditation for the rest of the. Better try and get this on properly so it's not moving around all the time. Okay. So we're going to start with some meditation. So let's just settle into our meditation position. Most of us here are meditators. Actually, even if we think we're not, we are. We just might not always be meditating on the right thing, you know? We need to reorientate our mind. That's what that's what meditation really is. It's like recognizing we can do it already, but we just need to keep readjusting what we're meditating on, you know? So that's the good news. There's always good news and bad news in this tradition, you know? So I'll talk about that a little bit later. But so let's settle into our more peaceful place for meditation, not neurotic place, peaceful place. And how lucky we are to have such a center to help to bring us to that place of peace. The kindness of so many beings offering so much of their service through their body, service through maybe monetary offering, through their time. So already we depend on that for us. We depend a lot on sentient beings for our happiness, even our spiritual happiness, even our realizations. So some of us here have been very kind to offer so much service. So we rejoice in that and rejoice in everyone who's offered and using that precious opportunity, situation we have to now contemplate a little bit more deeply on the nature of life. All those questions, why we're here, what we're doing, where we're going. That's what Buddhism answers. So a few breaths in and out, maybe a bit more deeply. And then exhaling any stale wind energy, busyness. And slowly going into a deeper rhythm of breathing as the mind settles. Checking in. Where are we now? What's our mind communicating to us right now? Is it tired? Is it a bit busy? Or is it nice and peaceful and settled? Just labeling that, not getting too much into more than that, just labeling, being aware of the contents of your mind at the beginning of your meditation, just acknowledging that. That's it. So again, what is meditation? It's gom. Gom is the Tibetan word becoming familiar with positive states of mind. And what do those positive states of mind do? They open up pathways of communication that awaken within ourselves our innate wisdom. So meditation is kind of like learning to open up those pathways. How do we do that? Instead of blocking our pathways to wisdom, trying to wake them up. We all have an innate wisdom. We have 3 levels of consciousness. Gross, that's day-to-day sensual consciousnesses. Our gross mental consciousness. We have subtle one, dream consciousness. Or when we get deeper into meditation, mind becomes more subtle. Then we have very subtle. So that's our kind of most deepest innate wisdom. So we want to connect more with the subtle and very subtle ones. They're more powerful, resonate more with our innate wisdom. But we use the grosser minds to hear and reflect, analyze a little bit more the teachings. Using our thoughts to chip away at our wrong concepts, distorted views, or blocking the innate wisdom. So we need all 3 in the beginning. Till the grosser, the mind communicating, our ability to communicate with our innate wisdom becomes more powerful. So Buddhas are communicating with us all the time, as I mentioned. Gross ways, subtle ways, very subtle ways. That's their quality and ability. So if the Buddha was here, what would he communicate to us right now? Especially in light of what's going on in the world. It's hard to be encouraged by what's going on outside, generally in the world, in politics, and the economy, like that. It's difficult times. So hard to find hope out there. So the Buddha would say we have to find encouragement and hope through our precious, being aware, more and more aware of our precious human life. As Pabonka Rinpoche says in Liberation in the Palm, it's one of the 8 great Lamrim texts, Gradual Path to Enlightenment. He says having this human condition it's like being halfway up the mountain on our spiritual evolution. It's not just that, it's not just being halfway up, having a human body, but we have in possession like all the tools and equipment to keep going further. We have the teachings, teachers, centers. We have our own spiritual inspiration, our curiosity, our wish to dig deeper into, not just looking at the surface of life, So that's amazing. That's our greatest gift that we gave ourselves a past life. So we have this unique window of opportunity to keep working on our minds, to work towards moving up the mountain, relieving ourselves of our karmic burdens, our kind of limited views right now. Like even halfway up, we can't see everything when we're halfway up the mountain, but when we go to the top, wow, panoramic view, reality of everything. That's what it's like when you reach enlightenment. You have the panoramic view. You're in that sky-like blissful experience, into the sense of self totally absorbed into space, joy, happiness. And we can see all beings from up there. So the Buddha would say, keep focused on that. Take joy, take heart in this opportunity, and these special tools that we carry. Many people are human, but they may not have the tools and equipment. But we've gifted them from our past life, so we can utilize them to keep going up the mountain and liberate ourselves from what is now our kind of limited view of reality, ourselves and others. So how wonderful that is. Let's see if we can just rejoice a little bit in where we are right now. Or maybe a big bit. And can we keep taking the pathway to wisdom up the mountain with the tools we have? How much are we going to keep taking that path? Through listening, reflecting, meditating on the teachings, and opening up this deeper communication with our own innate wisdom. All that together. So for those pathways to open up, we also need the blessings, for our innate wisdom to wake up. We need a source of blessing, like fuel. So in this case, we imagine the Buddha appearing spontaneously, try and fill our consciousness with that golden light image of the Buddha, seated beautifully on a lotus and moon cushion. If we really saw the Buddha, wow, it would like blow our minds, because they have this incredible radiance. Even the statues we can see have a beauty to them, but the real Buddha, when you read the text, it's mind-blowing how they appear, when you're able to see them. So we try and feel the Buddha seated on a lotus, sun and moon cushion, this golden hue body. Very peaceful eyes, kind of penetrating me and all sentient beings around me with love and kindness, compassion, but also this deep innate wisdom. Just like if we have, when we're in the presence of our teachers, we feel that. Holy beings, lamas. We think about why we take refuge. Well, because we have this precious human life. We have so many pathways of wisdom to waken up in ourselves yet. But we've got this so far, so that's great. It's all being around us, still blocked, but willing to get more open up, become like Buddha, become the Dharma, become the Sangha for all sentient beings. We take refuge, recite that refuge prayer. once in Tibetan, twice in English. So we'll do the slower chant. Lamso Primsha is a slower chanting, so we can meditate a little bit more, feeling that blessing coming for the Buddha as we chant. So we'll do twice in Tibetan, sorry, once in English. So you can do the chant slowly twice together. Sangye chodan sogi chodnam la janchu bardu dagi kyab suchi dagi chenso yebe so nam gi drola penjir Sangye drubar sho sangye chodan sogi chognam la janchu bardu dagi kyab suchi dagi chenso Yebe so nam la benjir sangye barsho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. Okay. Then we're going to do the mandala offering. Like we did last week, just whatever understanding we have of that. I explained it a little bit last week, but whatever understanding we have, we do like that. The mandala, here we have a depiction of the universe, but basically offering something that's kind of precious to you, that you enjoy. Showing your appreciation for the teachings, but mostly, again, opening up the environment, creating an environment within us for this, our innate wisdom, our qualities and our realizations to grow. That's what we do when we offer. We're building this inner garden of realization. So we just try and imagine something, visualize, bring to mind something beautiful, as much as possible, and vast and expansive, like a beautiful place, park, garden, foods. Even for those of us who offer our body in service, to this center, we feel like we're offering our body in that way to the Buddha in service. Wasaji bogi jushe meto chamri rabling shenye de gyambadi sangye shindu mete war yi drogu nam dak jina Shogiram Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniyadayami. And then we finish just by reciting a few mantras. So sometimes you think, I don't know any of this, I don't have much connection to Tantra and mantra and like that. Sometimes we feel like that. Some of us feel very connected because they're maybe our imprints past life. Some of us feel like, I don't know, this mantra stuff, Tantra stuff, So when we do that, we kind of, it's like I said last week, we turn our vessel, our mind upside down, Of course, we might not feel it because the karma is not maybe strong for past life, but we should just allow the mantra to communicate with you. That's what it's doing. Opening up. It's like a deeper listening and awakening your wisdom. Just allow the syllables, the sound to speak to a deeper part of yourself. It's maybe not awake yet. That's what mantra's doing. Communicating with that. As I said, the more subtle consciousness has a power to resonate and open that up. So just allowing, instead of blocking, just allow. Just wherever you're at. And if we are, we can visualize light and nectar coming for the Buddha, as it always is, just like the sun, always radiating light. That's how the Buddha is. Penetrating every pore, cell, particle, or being, especially these levels of consciousness. Tayata o mune mune maha munaye soha. 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 Tayada o mune mune maha munaye soha. Tayada o mune mune maha munaye so. As soon as I come here, my throat blocks up. Maybe it's always blocked. I don't know. I'm not talking all the time. So anyway, hi again, everybody. So this class is about foundation of, basically just touching on. So last week, I used this meditation this morning because last week I talked quite a bit about, that's where we start in the Lam Rim, the gradual path to enlightenment. Just taking a hold of our precious human rebirth. So I talked about that last week. So I'm not going to talk much more about that. But that's why I led that meditation, just to remind us, just to tune in a little bit more deeply, try and feel that more deeply, taking a hold of the preciousness, the potential that this human life gives us. We need to keep thinking about that. Me too. It's very easy to get lazy. So that one's at the start, but really to kind of dispel laziness, a kind of ordinary view of this, why we're human, really trying to connect more deeply what is the meaning, purpose, and how I'm so fortunate. Because especially relevant because this, at the moment, the world's in kind of chaos, yeah. It's always chaotic, but it feels more chaotic, more difficult, more challenging, and mind can go down. I think if you watch too much news, we need to watch some. Even His Holiness the Dalai Lama watches some. Lama, she used to watch the news, didn't watch a lot of TV, but it was the news and animal programs, predominantly, and some sort of traditional Tibetan dancing and Nepal dancing as well. But I think that was the main things that Rinpoche watched that I knew about. And His Holiness also watches it. So we need to watch some, but we need to watch it in a way where our mind doesn't go down. And some of us may already know how to do that. Some of us, it's hard because the mind can go down. So especially in these times, it's important we have to rely on our inner world because the outer world's not easy. Can't change that much. Can change it a little bit in our immediate environment with who we are, how we support the community. But in a big scale, it's not easy. We can't, probably most of us do a lot, we can just do some within our way. So, so that meditation on precious human rebirth, really tuning into our Buddha nature, what our mind can do, what potential we have as a human. I mean, the qualities the Buddha are sort of say inconceivable. But we tend to think, well, that's out there somewhere, and I'm here. No, we need to keep moving on that spiritual journey. Because when you see examples like His Holiness, and I see my teacher, it's like, you know, in the beginning, it's very far away. I mean, it's still far away for me, for sure. But you feel like after 25, 30 years, you're a wee bit there, you know? And that wee bit is really amazing, you know? How you're just that wee bit more there, you know? It's wee, but it's big. You know what I mean? For some of us who've been practicing for some time, these wee bits become very big for us. Wee bit less anger. That's big. My peace feels so much bigger. Wee bit less neurosis. That's big. And it's big for other beings as well. You know, it really helps them when we develop our mind. So that's the bodhicitta motive. Tuning into that, you know, how much more we can benefit. Doesn't matter how old we are right now, you know, we have to go into future lives anyway. You know, so we're here, there, right now in this moment. How much more can we keep working on our mind, you know? Through service, through meditation, through listening. Some of us are all doing that anyway. It's just like to keep going, you know. Some of us give up, you know, or just stop. So, but I think it's because also we haven't quite got that we can get this Buddha nature. How much with this human life, we need to take a responsibility for that. Because many people don't have what we have in terms of the access to the teachings, teachers, a sanghas, an inspiring community. You know, so many people aren't in that situation, you know, so we are. So we need to do more. That's what I keep telling myself. That's mantra. Not like in a heavy way, but you know, like not lazy, not lazy. It's very easy after some years. As I say, it looks easy out there being a monastic, but it's not easy in here. So it's not, you know, spiritual practice is not easy in here for anybody, for any of us. But so we take a lot of inspiration through the precious human rebirth, like thinking about that more deeply, you know, and our Buddha nature and our responsibility to get on the cushion and do some more work as well, you know, definitely. But right now, does anyone do astrology? A little bit. Yeah, a wee bit. I mean, I'm not saying we're astrologers, but I'm not an astrologer, but I check up on some astrology. So this week, somebody sent me a link, and I just check it up from time to time, but I hadn't been checking it up the last few days. So why there's a lot of turmoil in the world? Well, you look astrologically, we're affected by the movement of the planets, you know. Each different planets like Neptune and Saturn and what's it, Jupiter, they all have Mars, you know, they all have this they hold a certain energy, you know, that influences our world system and influence us personally. I'm not saying you have to totally buy into that, but we're influenced by everything in our environment, including these planets in outer space, you know. So astrology it's actually really much a science, you know. Once you understand it, it's not that mystical. It's very much a science. But right now, astrologically, last year, there's a couple of really big planets that are like moving into new arenas. And that's why there's these huge shifts going on in the world, because these planets have a big influence when they move into a new sort of section or area of the world, you know. So, or they kind of embody a different quality in different areas. So this one, Neptune, that rules spirituality, ideals, compassion. That's that planet Neptune. That rules that. That's moving into a new place called Aries. And Aries is like actually the very beginning of the kind of called system. Even in the Vedic and the, you know, there's different types of astrology, Tibetan astrology, Vedic astrology. It's all, they all would say the same thing, you know. So these planets are moving into it's done this Neptune planet spirituality has done what we call a 284 something year cycle as it goes around these different areas of who we are and how we are manifesting in this world and this world as a whole. And it's moving in, so now it's starting again. It's restarting its cycle of 280 something years this week. So it's quite big, you know. So what does that mean for us? Even if we're not astrologers, nor into astrology, it basically means like we have to re-begin, it's pushing us into getting redefining our spiritual values, redefining our purpose, our motivation, our intention, getting re-inspired on our spiritual path. And that's why there's so much juggling going on in the world right now, because people are, it's like, it's pushing us to kind of get into that place, you know. And there's a lot of resistance for some quarters. Other stuff needs to purify and come out, and you know, all the junk coming out. It's almost like that. It brings a lot of junk, you know. So it's almost like you can see that it's bringing out a lot of junk and conflict. So we might feel that in ourselves too. But it's just calling us that what's appearing in our outer environment. It's also like, can we use the precious human rebirth and Buddha nature to get re-inspired again? And Aries also is a fire planet. And fire is very much about action and energy. So energizing us on our spiritual path. So that's the influence this week. That's the astrology forecast for this week. But it's a bit unique, you know. So I'm not going to give one next week probably, but that's this one. So I just thought, okay, I need to tune into that, you know. We tune into that vibration, that frequency of being re-inspired, kind of realigning ourselves, redefining, bringing energy, more energy and aspiration into our spiritual path. And actually, you know, there's always that energy and inspiration out there all the time anyway. You know, when the Buddha, so I said for this class, probably go in and out of the Buddha's life story or who the Buddha is a little bit, because it doesn't matter where we are, even if we need to, you know, as Buddhists or as you know, we're still entering and kind of checking out Buddhism. It's very inspiring to get close to the life story of the Buddha, to think about the life story of the Buddha. Yes, some of us who are already Buddhists, when we go back over it, doesn't matter how many times you go back over it, it's very inspiring, you know, when you think about what the Buddha achieved for us, you know, and how he did it, how he came into this world, how he born out of this kingdom. You know, he was born into great wealth, great luxury, had everything at his fingertips. Anything you could want in some kind of like 5-star samsara, yeah. He was born a prince, you know, so princes have everything. Princes this life, you know, they've got everything at their fingertips, but wow, so many problems. Right? Well, according to the newspapers, who knows? But but I think there's quite a lot of drama in politics, right? Well, similarly, the time of the Buddha would be the same, you know. Any kingdom like that, you know, in this realm, in this world, there's always drama in politics. But they have all these kind of essential things at the fingertips, you know, everything like that mostly. So the Buddha had that. And he was protected. His father, many of us know the story, but you know, his father, his king, the king wanted him to be king. You know, he wanted him to be king, but you could see, his father could see, and actually there was some prophet that came to the kingdom when the Buddha was born, because there was all these like holy signs when the Buddha was born, you know, special signs that kind of saints could see in the skies and the stars, like when Jesus was born, you know. Like that, you know, there's signs, there's special signs. Even when the Dalai Lama was born, there was signs. When Lama Zopa Rinpoche was born, there was signs. There's always signs. And it's some people see them, but you know, again, depending on how we're sensitive to that. But either way, you know, at that time, the sages or the hermits were very sensitive to certain signs, and they could see a holy being was born, and one came to the kingdom, and you know, he pronounced that he could see. He actually felt sad because he said, you know, the Buddha, your son, said to the king, will either be a great prophet or he'll be a great king. You know, and he was quite tearful because he said, if he's a great prophet, I'm too old. I won't reap the benefit of that this life, you know. So either way, the king was a bit like, oh my God, you know, well, I don't want him to go off and be a hermit, you know, in the forest. So I need to protect him. So he just surrounded the kingdom with loads of pleasures, you know, and wouldn't really let the Buddha go beyond the walls of like ordinary life. He didn't want him to see ordinary life. So he gave him women and, you know, first of all, education, then he had all his own, you know, women and this and all the sports and all the, you know, the luxury enjoyments, anything you can think of, you know, he had all that. And then at some point he got married and, you know, he was able to choose the women he liked, the princess he liked the most, and was married for some years. But at some point he had he was still very spiritual nature, very compassionate. And then he was able to get out of the kingdom one day. So he saw, and I always think about that. Well, what, how did he see that? We see it as ordinary. He saw birth, he saw old age, he saw sickness and death, that which his father tried to protect him from, because he, I mean, as it says in the story, his father would have young people around him all the time. People who weren't sick, lively and vibrant and youthful. And so he tried to do all that, but still because the Buddha was so spiritually sensitive, he's like, I don't know if this is quite right, and he wanted to go and see his people. So he went and he saw birth, old age, sickness, and death. So that communicated a huge amount to him that something wasn't right. So I think, well, what would that have been like? Because we think a lot about that. We don't think about it maybe too much. Of course, we hear the teachings, but maybe we don't think about it so much. But we definitely think about it when we're getting older. That's in your face, yeah. No choice not to think about it. But we did, yeah, but maybe when we get to our 50s, something like that. So anyway, it's just curious, so like that, that's around us all the time. Is that influencing us all the time? That is what the Buddha saw as something not being right, which we might see as normal. But with the Buddha's foresight, his spiritual nature, he saw that as something profound and something that needed to be fixed. Yeah. So do we see that as something that needs to be fixed? So the Buddha felt like that needed to be fixed. So he left the kingdom, out of great compassion, out of spiritual, a huge spiritual intention, out of the merits of his past life, done so much spiritual work in his previous lives. And so there was also hermits around at that time. So he, so give up this life. What did he do? He, was the first principle I'm trying to get to today somewhere is the first, we have these three principles of the past. So start off with appreciating and recognizing the spiritual opportunity we have right now, this door. Second one is what we call renunciation. Don't like that word. So that's what the Buddha had spontaneously. He saw birth, he saw old age, and he was just like, woof, there's a problem there. Right away, that's amazing. Takes us a while to get there. It needs to kick in our life a little bit. And also mentally, we start to feel it more, because actually that's where it's stemming from. So birth, old age, sickness, and death. So our daily life, we see that all the time, more and more, especially old age, sickness, and as we're in an older community, mostly here. I mean, even the Buddha saw birth as sickness. Actually, what the Buddha saw when he goes out as well was that he saw a hermit, somebody meditating, and he was like, "Who's that? What's he doing? I want to do that." So that's what he did, and he just did. I tell the story of John Tompa last week? Can't remember. No, nobody remembers. Maybe I didn't then. No, yeah. I've been teaching 2 or 3 classes, and I'm like, did I teach that in that class? Anyway, no, maybe. Anyway, yeah, I'll get to there. But it's a little bit like he's a practitioner from the 11th, 12th century. But it's a bit like what this story of John Tompa. But basically, it's quite, I just think that is amazing. The Buddha had that sensitivity, But he wanted to find out, well, there's the problem. So I need to fix that, and that's what the hermits did. They were going out into the forest to fix that problem, Why is it? That's not something not quite right. Where's it coming from? So that's actually the first noble truth. The truth of suffering, being able to kind of pinpoint that down in a sort of more grosser level. It's the symptoms of what's going on in our lives, So it's a bit like, like why we get old. Why do we, why is it we get sick? Why we get this? Why we get that? That's what the Buddha went off to answer, to try and find a solution to. So that's what we're doing, Buddhist perspective. That's what we're trying to do in our practice. Go a bit deeper in answering those questions. So that's where we're stepping into renunciation, that mind, you know, looking at the problem. It's a bit like the good cop, bad cop situation. Lama Zopa Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe. So for those of you who don't know, they are our spiritual founders here, along with backed by His Holiness Dalai Lama, the top, the main guy. So they, you know, in the early days, they used to, I did mention this in a class, in the early days, I mentioned this in one of the classes. In the early days, I think this is a really good example of where we need to approach our spiritual practice. In the early days, Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche would teach these 10-day courses to the hippies. Some of you were hippies, or in that generation. I kind of just missed it, but I still try to be a hippie for a while. I did a hippie thing for a while. Just tagged on at the very end, you know. So in the early days, Lama, you know, the early students, late 60s, some of you met Mummy Max, who passed away recently, or about a year or so ago, a year or two ago. Yeah, she lived here, yeah. So anyway, she was around in those days, incredible, supporting all the monks and just working for the monastery, you know. So the monastery was just founded around the late 60s, early 70s. And then they started offering courses to the hippies, to Westerners, mostly hippies, but I mean, any Westerners, but it was a lot of hippies. I mean, of course, they were looking for something else, you know, dissatisfied, which is great. It's a good beginning. Not the right path. They didn't take the right pathway to start with. But they got onto the right pathway, yeah, right? So this is where we all are, you know. So they, and Lama Yeshe and Rinpoche would teach the courses. So they would teach, so Rinpoche would come in and talk about suffering and the hell realms and the lower realms and the this and that, and it would be like, you know, I mean, hey, we're already suffering. Do we need to hear it more, you know? Okay, that's what it can feel like when you first meet the Dharma, the suffering, the causes, and it's like, well, I came here to feel better, not to feel like it worse. But the thing is, we need to know that we need to understand the scope of the problem. Yeah, it's not a simple problem. It's simple once we've fixed it. Everything works easy. But why is our life not simple now? Why is it complicated? Why is it confused? Why can't we see by the end of our nose? We can't really see what's going to happen when we go out the door, you know? We can't. We have to be honest. We have some intuition and think for sure, you know, we have some hopes and wishes and expectation, but why is that? So that's what Rinpoche would teach, the difficult stuff, you know, the cause of the problem. And Lama would come in and say, you're all Buddhas, you're all enlightened, you've got this great wisdom and you're precious and you can become Chenrezig and look at me, I'm so joyful and you can, you know, so it was all like really happy, you know. So the students used to call Rinpoche the bad cop and the good cop. And I think that's really actually what the Lamas, in their very skillful way, were showing us this is how you have to practice. Taking a hold of your goodness, being joyful about that, but you've still got this stuff to work with. And you need to get to the bottom of that. You know, so that was what was good. Then you went up, and then up, you know. But of course, we don't want to get discouraged by our stuff, you know, for sure. But we need to be aware of you know, if we really want to dig deep, we need to investigate and study and really think about on the analytical level what the Buddha's talking about. What did he say? We're all here because he knows he has something to say. So we need to keep that level of analysis and going through kind of these truths, you know, these four truths and in the context of the Lamrim. We've got the four truths and we just go through them step by step in the Lamrim, dissecting them, unfolding them, making them our wisdom, making the four truths our wisdom through the pathway of the Lamrim. And also through, if we can, some tantra practice, mantra, visualization. That's the good stuff. That's what wakens up. That's what helps more quickly to waking up our innate wisdom. Because if we just fill ourselves with, I'm bad, I've got suffering and this and that, you know, that's not what we're doing. That's not what we're doing. So we need a purification practice to clean the mind Mantras, visualization, there's prostrations, there's water bowls, there's many of these things to clean the mind, and that wakes up the innate wisdom. So what you hear in the Lam Rim becomes your wisdom. It doesn't become just stuff, some analytical periphery stuff up there. Does that make sense? I mean, I think we all know that, but we always, as myself, it's almost like I'm just talking to you to remind myself. Because, sitting on the cushion, we have to remind ourselves of these all the time because the delusions are very powerful. Right? For those of us practiced for a while, maybe not, maybe even new people, we know. Our stuff's powerful. So we have to baby ourselves through the path all the time. Looking at, and that means picking the mind up when it needs picked up and pulling it a little bit back down when it's too much, clinging, I'm okay, I'm fine, and not really paying attention to, is this really opening up my wisdom, this way of being right now? This behavior of our body, speech, and mind, is that in accord with waking up my wisdom, or is it discordant? That's where we kind of be mindful, check up. So, so yeah, like, where am I with that? So renunciation, yeah, it's that kind of, like when we see the example of the Buddha, trying to get a lot of inspiration for that, he just in that moment, not in that moment, I think he took a little bit of a while. He went out and see birth old age, and then he thought about it for a while, and he was going more and more and more deep. And I think the king and all that were like, what's going on there? I can try to imagine what it would be like. Because, the king was already like, I don't know if the king found out that he went out or whatever, the kingdom, but he became more and more contemplative for a while. And because he knew there would be so much resistance, he had to leave the kingdom in the middle of the night when everybody was asleep, when his wife had just given birth to their first child. That sounds like, he's not being very responsible there. But he saw a much bigger goal, a much bigger goal that he had came into that life for. That he had been creating the causes for in many, many previous lifetimes. When you look, there's something called, there's a selection of stories that the Buddha taught called the Jakata. Is it Jakata? Jataka? Jakata? Jataka, thank you. Yeah. Jataka tales. That's also very nice to read, that would be a great class sometime to go through some of them, like just how the Buddha, and just feeling the kindness of the Buddha. I mean, it's not easy to give up that. We have a lot less to give up. And he gave it up out of great compassion, not just because he couldn't be bothered with that, it's like he really saw like there was a big problem to fix here in the universe, in the world, and sentient beings. And he, with great courage, came out the kingdom that night. And he basically, went right into the forest. From being like surrounded by luxury and pleasure, he was able to kind of spontaneously have this mind of renunciation, giving up, seeing the kind of saltwater happiness. It's another level of what we're trying to see when the Buddha talked about suffering. There's a level where it's like, okay, there's a problem about nobody wants. Does anybody want old age? If you had a choice, would you rather stay young? I mean, of course, there's a wisdom that comes out of our years. That's nice. But the body stuff, I'd rather just leave that, not have to deal with that, sickness, death's kind of scary, all that stuff. So there's that level that we want to start to see, that's rippling through our life. That's more obvious. So the Buddha said that needs fixed, I need to see if there's a solution to that. And then the other level that the Buddha recognized is like being in the kingdom with all the saltwater pleasures. I call them saltwater. That's in the text somewhere. There's an analogy for that. Trying to feel like, well, even if I have this 5-star samsara, many of us have quite comfortable, we have our difficulties, but we have comfortable life. There's a level of deeper dissatisfaction going on, like we need to move from one one pleasure to the next, like we have, as I think Venerable Rubina does it very nicely, talking about the chocolate when it runs out and all that kind of thing, how we, the temporary pleasures, even though we call them happiness, still don't give a level of inner satisfaction. They're like the chocolate cake and the nice view, and it's nice, but we get fed up with it. There's a level where it doesn't bring joy, and it gives something, but it's as a Buddha would say, it sort of transforms into suffering. So I'm not going to go too deeply into that, but that's the kind of next layer. It's a level of saltwater happiness, and it's a bit like, from what the Buddha sees, is we're all bobbing around on the ocean. So from the Buddha's insight and perspective, from the enlightened mind, if you were at the top of the mountain looking down on all sentient beings, you're up there enlightened, enjoying the view, free from all the concepts, limitations, and restraints. And what do you see? You see all beings around, bobbing around on the ocean, and just drinking from that. Not getting, when you drink ocean salt water, it doesn't, it's not easy. There's a slight moment where you might feel some refreshment, and then you need to drink more. That's how the Buddhas see us, on the bobbing around on that ocean, bobbing around. The ocean's kind of our karma and delusion, and we're kind of stuck on there, drinking saltwater happiness and our 5-star samsara, that somehow we think that's okay. Somehow we still think that's happiness. And we're not saying, for, right at our level, we can't give up. We can't just nobody's saying you need to give all that up and throw it away and just go into the forest, go into the mountains, find a cave in the mountains here. It's not like that at all. It's just getting more insight into the layers of where our mind's not working properly. Things aren't, we were not touching a real happiness in ourselves. We get moments in our meditation when there's peace, joy, happiness, but again, it runs out. It's not all the time. The Buddha's up there in the sky and the happiness and the bliss. We can get there, right? That's possible. And that's what we study, and that's how we train our mind, reorientate our mind through the Lam Rim to get there. So we need to feel like that is absolutely possible. We're not limited beings all the time. And actually, we do feel that for those of us who have been meditating for some time, there's progress in the mind. So that's the other thing that the Buddha, he gave up. He saw that very clearly, right? Because he has this incredible merit in spiritual aspirations for past life. So in this life, it was just clean, clear. I need to get out of that. No interest. It's like just throwing something away. Lama's Operum used to say, it's like throwing away it's like used toilet paper. Rinpoche was quite direct with some of his analogies, You'd be like, oh, but that's what Rinpoche, compared to the bliss and the joy and the happiness and the peace that the Buddhas have, what we have is like used toilet paper, right? Even if you feel like, I don't want to hear that, just let it sit there, Some point that might be our wisdom, we might recognize that. So that's the analogy Rinpoche used to use, like that. But that takes time to see that, So that's what the Buddha saw. So it was very easy for him, in a way. Yeah, he gave up all these things. But I think in many ways, it did take a lot of courage. But in other ways, when you have that insight, then it's natural that you would just move into, you want to find a solution, Like we find pain in our body when we're not feeling well. I mean, some of us might not go to the doctors, but most of us kind of look for a solution. We feel that pain. So what he felt is he felt that very acutely, the pain of birth, old age, sickness, and death. He felt that acutely because of the power of his spiritual sensitivity for past life. And he felt very acutely how all those pleasures in the kingdom are not happiness at all. It's just this circle we're on, We're bobbing around in the ocean. So that's what he he thought, okay, there must be something deep. There must be more. So he actually left to find the path to happiness, you know. So that's what he did. That's what renunciation is. Emerging from that. Really discovering that in our own being, step by step, and gaining a sense to emerge. Find something higher than that. Discover something more peaceful than that, more yeah, I mean, like an everlasting happiness, not the saltwater one. But I'm not saying we have to give up our saltwater happiness, right? That's not easy. Because we still like that. I mean, I still like, you know, chocolate cake and all that stuff. I haven't got there yet. But we can chip away at those things as we're building up our wisdom knowledge. You know, as we build up our innate wisdom, our pathways to wisdom, as we move through the Lam Rim, we start to see that more clear, you know, the situation we're in and how, you know, and then the possibilities we have to get more happiness. So that's what the Lam Rim is. It's a little bit like a mirror, just showing us, you kind of like where, you know, where we want to go. It's our journey on the road to discovering what the Buddha discovered. You know, and it's very fortunate because like here we have all these texts. It's Kangyur and Tengyur. So it's like 84,000 sets of teachings that the Buddha taught. And then the Tengyur is all the commentaries by all the holy beings and masters and everything. So that's a lot to get through. Imagine if it's like, okay, there's your path to enlightenment. Woohoo, you know. So there's this great Lama Atisha, who was invited to Tibet by a king, the king of Tibet at that time, because I think the Tibetan Buddhism came to Tibet in the 9th century with various masters were involved in that. Came there, and then it kind of declined a little bit. So one of the kings was quite concerned in the 11th century. So he heard about Lama Atisha, this great master in India, who also had a similar life story to the Buddha, who was born in as a prince. And he also kind of slowly shuffled his way out of the kingdom. A little bit in a slightly different style, but he managed to get out his responsibilities because he really wanted to practice the Dharma. You know, he also came from a lineage of very many lives of spiritual practice. So he was like, why am I here? And, you know, and that gives, for us, it's a very strong example of what they're giving up and how, you know, inspiring us to be able to sort of give up or renounce or see the sort of, that it's futility a little bit in that, just sticking to that, you know. So, but anyway, Lama Tisha, so he came to Tibet and he taught because Tibetans were in a, you know, at that time, they were in a similar situation to us. The Dharma was quite new for them. They had, you know, like we have ancient traditions in America and you know, I'm from Scotland, they have the Celt tradition. Everybody has their different, you know, sort of ancient traditional religious sects or, you know, groups. So they had the, what were they called, the ones in Tibet? The Bon tradition, yeah, Bon tradition. So they had that there, but then anyway, at that time, you know, I say in 9th century, Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava and some other masters came and established the Dharma, and then it kind of came down again. And then, so the king was concerned, so because there were some wrong views being developed. So Lama Tisha came, and you know, so like us, the Tibetans were still quite new, and he said, well, for you, here is this text called the Light of the Path. He put that together out, all these sets of teachings. He put this very concise text together for the Tibetans to practice the you know, the Lam Rim, which embodies renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness, you know, basically in there, how you practice that in a very concise manner. So from that, we're very lucky, you know. So Lama Tisha, this lineage of Lam Rim comes from Lama Tisha. And there's another, his closest disciple was Dron Tompa. And he was this, you know, very compassionate yogi hermit type, you know, very ascetic, very pure practitioner. He lived in Tibet and he met Lama Tisha, went to Tibet when he was kind of on the older side, maybe must have been in his 50s or something. And because he was there for about 15, 20 years, something. Do you remember that? Something like that, yeah. 12, 15. So he met John Tompa there, and John Tompa was this beautiful ascetic and yogi practitioner, you know, and he became Lama Tisha's heart disciple. And he's actually regarded John Tompa as a past life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So it's quite interesting when you get all this in the Tibetan tradition, all these like, where all these lamas came from, you know? It's like, wow. Where we came from, I don't know, but we came from some spiritual lineage, you know, we've all got lineage. It's just not widely known. But we all have a lineage, yeah. So, and I think some of us we've got reasonable lineages because we're here, you know. We got this far. So anyway, John Tompa, just to show a little bit like renunciation, what that means, you know, again, from his one example of him, when he, one day, so he was already like, you know, a very well-known teacher. I don't know at what point in his life, this story this comes, but one day there was an old practitioner, some senior practitioner, you know, at the temple or something meditating, and John Tompa was around there. And this practitioner was, what was he doing? He was, first of all, I think he was reading texts. No, he was meditating. No, I think let's start with reading texts, yeah. He was doing different things, but I can't quite remember the order. But anyway, John Tompa came across him and he was reading texts. And John Tompa says, well, it's very good that you're reading texts, but it's better to practice the Dharma. He's like, okay. So he thought about that for a while and he thought, well, maybe I'll circumambulate. So he went circumambulating. Of course, there comes John Tompa. Well, it's very good that you're circumambulating, but it's better to practice Dharma. And he's like, all right. So he never said anything. And it's often like that when you have a really powerful being saying something to you, you don't know quite what to say to that, you know? They're sort of prodding you, but you're like, they're prodding something, but you don't know. It's just like, what? You know, they have this ability to prod something, and then you need to figure out why they're prodding or what does that mean. Or so that's why I think he didn't know what to say. You know, he's just like, So then he thought okay, I'll meditate. So he went off to meditate. Of course, here comes John Tompa again. He's probably like, oh no, what's he going to say now? You know, and he said, it's very good you're meditating, but it's better to practice Dharma. So he's like, well, what do you mean by practice Dharma? And what did he say? Give up this life. Oh, that's quite a big ask, you know? And for us, that might feel like, well, I have to give all my weird possessions. I just like to be the Buddha and go into the forest and do like that, you know? Of course, I think that practitioner did eventually go into the forest, and we're talking about the 11th century here. But what that really means, I mean, basically what we're doing with renunciation is building up in our mind what that really means. You know, how do we do that? How do we we don't just do it like this. We need to do that mentally. We need to create renunciation you know, it needs to be our inner experience. It's not really about giving up, throwing away our stuff. And I think in the early days in Kolpa, Rimshi used to talk about, use this example as well. Fortunately, Rimshi told similar stories many times, so it helped me to remember some of them. He said in the early days when the hippies come, the only thing that was available, the only text, book, you know, there was no translation in the 60s. I mean, some of my Dharma brothers and sisters who are in like their 70s, 80s now, they would just sit there and everything was in Tibetan. But they just wanted to be there with these lamas, you know? So the teachings, the initiations, there was no translation. There was like one book, Milarepa. I think there was a couple of books. One was Milarepa's life story, you know? So of course, you'd read that and you think, well, give up this life is going into the forest and turning green, you know, because you eat nettles. So Milarepa was also similar. He was like he was like a great practitioner. I won't go into his life story now, but he similarly went deep into the forest and, you know, meditated and achieved very high realizations, you know. But, you know, I think before he did that, he already had renunciation. He didn't go there to get it. He didn't give up all his stuff, and that's renunciation. Because as Rimshi said, you know, like I said, in the early days, all they had was this book, Milarepa's life story, and then some of the hippies would come. He said one person came that, you know, they just have, I mean, anyway, they didn't have much. So they probably thought, I'm halfway renounced already, you know, because I didn't have much. And he said one had so, you know, he only had, I think the only thing he wore was a long kind of Indian thing, gown thing, and you could see right through it. When he came to the teachings, you know. He said, so Rinpoche is that example, a little bit like maybe we think renunciation's that, and it's not that, you know, it's a changing of our inner motivation, our inner viewing of reality, our inner understanding of what creates happiness and what creates suffering. That's what it is, you know. Shifting that perspective, shifting, awakening our wisdom to see what is happiness. So very much in the start, I think the Lam Rim, for us Westerners, a lot of us have we have good hearts, we're kind. I mean, we still have our stuff, but generally we're kind, good-hearted, try not to harm others. But the wisdom side's weak, you know, or the wisdom, I think certainly I can say for myself, what I really appreciated, I mean, I appreciate all the Buddha's teachings, but what I really appreciated was this wisdom side, you know, like what the wisdom side's doing that we, you know, I didn't find growing up or anything like that, you know, I just really find it through the teaching the wisdom. So so after we meditate on, so to keep chipping in renunciation, you know, what that is, how we're developing that. Well, first of all, it's redirecting, like precious human rebirth, just connecting with this potential. What's the next meditation in the Lam Rim after that? Somebody's footstep. No, I think next one. Well, there is that one. I'm not going to talk about that. But the next one is death and impermanence. That's actually the big one. That's the one where, you know, and we all think about that sometimes. No choice. Right? But that's the kind of next one that starts to kind of reorientate this mind to what does give up this life mean? That's the kind of big one, you know. And what does that meditation primarily chip away at when we do it? What's the main delusion? The main delusion, the first sort of challenge in the mind that it chips away at. Well, it does chip away at that, but before we get there, it definitely chips away at that because that's the main one we want to get to, yeah. But what's it chipping away at? There's some periphery stuff. Yes? Yes, well done, yeah. It's almost called, I think they call it like, you know, like the footprint of the elephant is the biggest footprint, the heaviest, and what makes the most impression. So they say that one, somehow if we know how to meditate on it well, that really makes a big impression on our mind, on our spiritual momentum, and on the wrong way that we're kind of attaching, clinging, putting a lot of value onto the appearances of this life. So that's what meditation on death and impermanence, that's kind of what we're because yeah, we want to get to this juicy stuff of emptiness and selflessness and all that, but it's not easy when there's, you know, that's why it's called the gradual path to enlightenment, you know, because we need to chip away at our relationship with our impermanence. We're all impermanent. That's what the Buddha saw as well. You know, when he saw death, that was one of the things he saw coming out of the kingdom. He saw birth. He didn't see birth, he saw old age, sickness. He saw death. So then for him, that was like, well, this is all going to stop, you know. And where are we going and what are we doing and you know, all this stuff comes up, you know. So it's a hard one, isn't it? It's like, don't know if I want to think about that right now. It's nice out there. But oof, to bring it in there, it's hard, it's quite difficult. We need a bit of skillfulness with ourselves to befriend our immortality, you know. Is that the right word, Jay? Not immorality, immortality. Get them mixed up sometimes. So we need we need to sort of, work away on that, our relationship with, because that one, when we get that a little bit more clear, we start to bring it in to the head, somewhere in there, in the heart. That's what makes a big transformation, you know. That's what brings a lot of, you know, even if you think now, you know, well, if I went to the doctors, well, most of us go to the doctors anyway. Sometime we're going to go to the doctor and he's going to say, we're done here, right? But imagine, or maybe we don't, maybe we're done somewhere in our house, or, you know, we don't know what that scenario is going to look like, but we can imagine. And this is one of the best ways to just get an idea of what that meditation can kind of do to the mind, is we imagine we go to the doctor and we say, okay, you've got 3 months, or you've got a year. We can sort of imagine that a little bit, yeah? It's not that hard. So what would that do to the view of our life? What would that do to our motivation for life? I think it would shift it quite a bit. If we really go into that, without being like, oh, I've only got a year, I have to do it, you know, not like that, but because we gently bring that because actually that meditation is opening up a correct, talking about these wisdom pathways, but it's actually opening up a correct wisdom pathway. Because right now we're sort of blocked by feeling like somehow I've got a long time to live. But when we even put that analytically a little bit in the mind, well, we know that's not true. So that's why we need the wisdom to wake up, and we need some analysis. And that's what we're doing in meditation. We do some analysis of the topic, and then then hopefully that's sort of waking up the right pathways for us to be able to practice even more, find that everlasting peace and happiness. It's not beating ourselves up with, I'm going to die and I'm so bad, and it's not like that at all. You know, it's like finding, and I found that meditation quite hard, right? Venerable Shrine, it's not easy, yeah? It's kind of like, I don't know if I want to meditate on that. I'll just go to bodhicitta and emptiness. That's nice, you know? I'll just skip to there, you know? And I'll get it once I've got those, you know? But we might, you know, but we need to find a way to work with that topic, you know, and there's like the 9 points and the 3 points and the this point and that point, you know, there's all these points, but we need to find a way, because I think, you know, when we get the right way with it, it wakes up our wisdom and it cuts through this kind of fascination and clinging to appearances that's keeping us locked in this kind of samsaric, bobbing around in samsaric saltwater happiness. Agree? Not agree? It's tricky. But you know, there's another way sometimes we can look at it. I always like this way of looking at it. There's these like 4, you know, in Buddhism, you've got 4 of this and 8 of that and 9 of that. It's a lot, but you know, you just something I'll just focus on this one or in these 2. So I'm trying not to give you too many today. I'm not going to go through the 9-point meditation today. Next week we'll start with a gentle meditation on. We have to be gentle with ourselves with these meditations, but I think they're important. Well, I don't think they are important. Doesn't really matter what I think, but they are important. According to the great masters of the past and the path, who have kind of somehow found a way to absorb that and for them to give them joy, not feeling depressed about it, you know, giving them momentum on their spiritual path, feeding them, giving them a source of inspiration to move forward on their path. You know, that's what we want from these meditations, precious human rebirth, thinking about death and impermanence and how it's chipping away, it's opening up something in us. You know, has anyone had a near-death experience or something like that, or thought maybe this is it? Some of us probably have, you know. So how, you know, what happens in those places? Anybody want to share? Yeah, Teresa. Wait. Oh, Teresa.
Hi, I hope you guys can hear me on Zoom. There's a feeling like I would do anything, absolutely anything to stay alive. It's a very intense feeling.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. But does it reshift? Is there a sense that it maybe coming out of that, does it reshift something in you?
Yeah, like this life is definitely going to end, definitely. And
Right.
so I better use it the way I want to use it because it's going to end.
There, that's what I'm talking about. That one. Yeah, but it does. It wakens up an innate wisdom. I think when we have a near death, when we meditate on death, what I think what we're trying to do is waken up an innate wisdom that's beyond the attachment. It's not about pushing and shoving. I need to do this. I need to do that. Do. There's something, because actually I talked in the beginning. I mean, I'm still working on this meditation myself. You know, Rimshi gave me this text, Pabonka's. I mean, Rimshi told many monastics to read that one. Do you read that one, Shankar? The Pabonka's Heart Spoon. Yeah, no, I've been given that one a few times, not just once. So it's like, okay, you have to meditate on, you know, like at the very last moment when you can't breathe and this, and it's very visceral, you know, like what's going on at the last moment with your body, and you're leaving the body, and you have to really go into it to get to that feeling like this is where you're going. So it's like you're almost going into a near-death experience when you read that text, you know? And I'm like, God, it's really difficult, you know? Because there's a lot of fear that comes up, or resistance, or like that. But then when I go deeper, it's like, but is there a wisdom behind that? And I think that's the point, you know? I think, and it takes a while, but we're chipping away at something, this sense of permanence that's blocking our wisdom. Yeah, it's like this, as Mary's saying, there's a sort of sense of, and it's hard because the kind of the habit to cling and, you know, it's not easy to shift through that. It's not easy at all. Nobody's saying it's easy, you know, but we can do it in a more gentle way, you know, by even just thinking, well, if I had a year to live, if we woke up and thought that, how that would reorientate I think if we really felt that, you know, not just like, well, imagine, and that would be thingy, and maybe, no, if we really felt that more, if I had a year to live, who's the I anyway, you know? First of all, it sort of shuggles that around, as you're saying, the wrong sense of self, that this strong sense of self, that gets jostled around when you think, maybe I've only got a year to live. Like the I gets bumped around, nudged in some direction, you know? And then there's a sense of like a shortness of your life instead of this kind of like, I'm just going on and on and on and on and on and on, you know, that permanence. Because if we've always got that permanence, even up to the time of, you know, we could be a few months away, but we'll still feel like there's a permanent thing going on in the mind, and on and on and on. That's the kind of attachment thing that's going on in the mind. So that's what we're trying to chip away at with meditation and permanence, because we have these four wrong concepts. And the first one is, I mean, I don't know if there's a really order to them, but I'm going to start with this one, is we cling to things that are impermanent as permanent. Other words, we cling to things that are not concrete, not solid, as solid and concrete. I mean, things just appear. I don't know, maybe your mind's not like this, but this room does appear solid and concrete, but it is slowly decaying. Our body, if we just think our body, it feels like something solid and concrete and self-existent. I think maybe not, again, if some of you have realizations, you won't have that experience, but you know, we have a feeling of the body, the mind telling us that the body is solid, independent, concrete. So, you know, if we don't check up, that's just there. Yeah, that's just there. So what we want to do is chip away at that which is not as a distorted view. And we do that through chipping away at this meditation on impermanence and death. Our body's impermanent. You know, it's not just aging, it's we're gonna leave there, you know, sometime. So like that, just thinking a little bit like that, thinking in a gentle but clear way. So the more we sort of purify the mind, the more we listen to teachings and analyze, that's also purifying. Maybe we do some meditation, purification practices. The more we have a little bit of space in the mind to not be, to just do this kind of gentle but clear reflection, to start to see the stuff on the mind, not be one with it. Be a little bit separate from it. That separation is our wisdom functioning, creating space. So some of you have been practicing for some time will see that. But even when we analyze, just gently analyzing the, you know, that feeling impermanence. And how if we go deep maybe into thinking, you know, that I only have a year to live, how that reshuffles that feeling of permanence a little bit. Think so? Does it? And it brings actually a bit of light. When we die, we go into our clear light nature. It's not nothingness. It's not the end. We go back to our innate wisdom, or at least that place where we can recognize our nature. We have gross, subtle, very subtle consciousness. So the very subtle one is where we can really open up our wisdom. You know, it's like where we have the opportunity to be on the top, the peak of the mountain, and see the view. Imbue our mind with a view of reality. So when we do meditation on impermanence, we're trying to get back there, not here, out here, stuck there, stuck here. We're trying to go back there, slowly, slowly. Go in there and wake that up there. We have to do both. So using the concept, a little bit conceptual meditation on death and impermanence, some of the key points. We don't need to go even through the 9 points in the beginning. We can go through one, this, you know. The main points is that are, you know, we're definitely going to die. You know, getting that clear in the mind. We're definitely going to leave the body. We don't know when. That's a harder one. There's this storm brewing. It's like living with a level of, you know, we know there's a storm going to come, but we don't know when. It's going to completely disrupt our lives. Who we think we are. Woof. And then, you know, the last one is the fragility, you know, thinking about how our body is fragile and it's, you know, it's very easy for something to go kind of wrong. We feel solid and concrete, but you know, we could get bitten by something poisonous just like that, you know, and die. There's ways like that. So there's a fragility to our body, even though our mind tells us it's very solid and concrete, especially when you're young. As you're older, maybe it's not telling you that so much. You're getting gentle reminders all the time that the body's not solid and concrete. It's very fragile because this is wrong today and that was wrong yesterday and tomorrow. But, you know, there's always something, right? Often as we get older. So, but we already, that's kind of almost, it's not too late, but we need to use that to show, okay, this is the fragility of the body. I need to focus on the mind a little bit. Doesn't mean don't take care of your body, get healthy, because we need it right now. We need healthy body. But like that, so we go through, we can touch on some of those and start to chip away. What they do is they chip away and try to help us to get a little bit less out there, a little bit more focused in there. So the Buddha, Milarepa, John Tompa, they were very focused in there, you know, because they'd done a lot of that work, you know, that meditation, and their wisdom was really functioning. So you don't just give stuff up without having the wisdom of renunciation. It's a wisdom we need to develop. You know, it needs to be, our mind's causal. You know, it's shifting and changing, experiencing, doing stuff, all creating all the time, stuff with our body, speech, and mind. We want to create this experience of a little bit less attachment, clinging, that's imbued with a wisdom. It's a wisdom mind, you know. It's not giving things up. It's not depressing. It's not being an ascetic out there, but not in there, you know. So it takes a lot of work to get that. Yeah, not a lot, but it takes some. Well, it probably takes a lot, but you know, but we can all do it a little bit, chipping away, you know, at how we view reality, chipping away at that. So that's kind of, once we chip away at the attachment, then we can slowly move in, you know, that concept of things being permanent, solid, that feeling in the mind, that familiarity with permanence. We want to become familiar with things impermanent, not solid, not concrete. So it's just like that, slowly shifting our mind into the right thing. So we always have some of it, for sure. We just need to just a little bit more. So it's giving up this life is giving up, you know, giving up like being attached to kind of things being solid and concrete on one level, including in life. That the mind that's telling us that, trying to step back for that and work away at feeling things less concrete, more impermanent, more fluid, more flowing. And in certainly our life, having this appearance of who we are, that will end. You know? But not in a huge scary way, you know, in a healthy way, chipping away at our wrong concepts. That's what renunciation is, just being dedicated to that in the beginning. And the more we chip away and the more our wisdom wakes up, renunciation we just have it. It just happens, you know. So that's what Drontompa meant. He didn't mean don't recite text, don't meditate, don't do this. He says, but you need to have this basis of renunciation first, you know. You need to work on that. That's the first level, chipping away at how we're misapprehending reality. In the beginning, how we're doing that is because we feel things are so solid and concrete. So first, to cut away that solidity, we work on the impermanence of our body, the impermanence of our life, the impermanence of phenomena, the impermanence of others. Just trying to hold that a little bit more. Then our mind gets a bit more fluid and open and the wisdom can start to come out. Because that much we're clinging is like blocked. I think for, you know, when you go into high yoga tantra, you can visualize your subtle body and channels and chakras and all this stuff. So right now you usually start by visualizing all these knots. You know, and then slowly you go through these meditations and they are not, you know. So why? It's because we're knotted around this sense of self. We're knotted around things being concrete and solid, you know, to a level. Again, some of us might be less knotted than others, I don't know, but there's still some knots, you know. So that's just showing this, the subtle body is just mirroring what's going on in our mind, you know. We're just a little bit knotted, you know. So again, good cop, bad cop, we're all great, we've got precious human life, but we've got this work to do. That's it. Any question? Yes. And online. Sorry, we're a little bit late, so we'll just have one question. But you can always ask me a question later if you want to. Yes.
I just wanted to share what's helped me with my connection with death
Yes.
is a belief that it's already there. I know what death is. I'm covering it up, but I know what it is. And it's not just me. I think every sentient being, no matter how dumb they are, they know about death. Bees, birds, you watch a bird chasing an insect that's going to eat it. That insect knows that it's going to die. Just want to share that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes. Something about they didn't hear, I think. Yeah. Yes, yeah, yeah. Okay, one more question.
And then Susan asked, Venerable Angie, could you please say more about the body mirroring our subtle mind?
I don't think it mirrors our subtle mind. It mirrors more where we are right now. I mean, this is just kind of my view a little bit. So it's almost like, yeah, we have this subtle mind that we go to at the death time, you know, most subtle one that goes from life to life. But I think what we are mirroring, what are present, who we are right now, the body, the condition, especially like we can say at the level of the body, it's so generally we have in the teachings of the subtle mind, and then all these limitations, you know, karma and delusion, two main causes of suffering in the Four Noble Truths. Karma actions and then our delusions, they're on top of the mind, on top of your pure luminous nature, you know. So it's like grime, it's almost like old stuff. You know, we've got our stuff. And some of it does feel kind of old. I mean, we've got an ancient wisdom too, but that's kind of, it comes out sometimes, but it's kind of blocked by grosser levels of mind. So, you know, I think, you know, what the old age, sickness and death are kind of right now for us, what that's mirroring is what's in the mind, what's covering our pure nature. It's like grime or, you know, old stuff, karmic habits, delusions, attachment. I think they come out, we see them through our body experience, through old age, sickness, birth, you know, that's what comes out. I mean, the Buddhas, you know, for Buddhas, holy beings, they have a pure, you know, pure body, you know, that goes on forever because they're subtle, that mirrors where they are. They are in that place of purity, you know, they've achieved all the qualities, so they're free for all the dust. But we're not free for the dust. We're still in you know, we're still in this place of being under the control of karma and delusions, facing death, facing impermanence, the permanent nature of life. So that's what I think our body shows that. Hope that answers the question. We try to feel that a little bit, how the body, yeah. All right. So we've been asked to do just as a dedication. So we maybe don't do extensive dedication, but we'll just do it as a dedication. First of all, we can dedicate all the merits. Let's just take a moment. Maybe you want to dedicate in a way, your way. Whatever you want to dedicate for your own spiritual journey. Especially thinking about Neptune being in Aries. Realigning, reinvigorating our motivation for spiritual practice. So that, and also dedicating always for us to continually develop, open up our wisdom, open up our potential to have more compassion, the awakening mind of bodhicitta for us and all beings. For the long lives, their great gurus, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, for Lama Zopa Rinpoche's auspicious return, you know, for that to happen without any obstacles. And for any other teachers to have long lives and all their wishes to be fulfilled. So all that. And then we are going to do a mala of the Medicine Buddha mantra. So we'll do a few together for Marcia, who passed away. So Octavia has been taking care of her, Octavia, for a long time. So she passed away three days ago, Wednesday. Yesterday. Oh, sorry, yeah, yesterday, yeah. So for her, we always dedicate for them to have a good future rebirth. So a good death, which means then a good future rebirth, where they meet Dharma, meet spiritual teachings, continue their journey on the path to enlightenment. Or to be born in a pure realm where there's no birth, old age, sickness, death, like that, no heaviness of the body. And we can practice there in an easier way. Or to be born in a pure realm which is already enlightened. I don't know. Then we don't need to do prayers, you know, but anyway, we'll do them. So we just imagine Medicine Buddha, the blue Buddha, like a sort of sapphire blue color. Above, we have it up there, above Marcia, wherever consciousness is, Guru Medicine Buddha, and just taking care of her, filling her up with light and nectar, taking care of her consciousness through the bardo into the next life. Tayada om bekanze, bekanze, maha bekanze, raza samogati soha. Tayada om bekanze, bekanze, maha bekanze, raza samogati soha. Tayada om bekanze, bekanze, Maha bekanze raza samogati soha tayada om bekanze bekanze maha bekanze raza samogati soha tayada om bekanze bekanze maha bekanze Raza samogati soha tayada om bekanze bekanze ma bekanze Raza samogati soha tayata om bekanze bekanze ma bekanze raza. Tayada om bekanze bekanze maha bekanze raza samogati soha Tayada om bekanze bekanze maha bekanze raza samogati soha Tayada om bekanze bekanze maha bekanze Raza samogati so. Okay, thanks so much. So we will start with a short meditation called Befriending Death next week. No, so not you might, I'm not going if it's a meditation on death, you know. Befriending death, how we can approach it in a healthy way and keep going through the 3 principles of the path. Yeah. Thank you.